Today's episode of 40 Thrive is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free trial of Audible that includes unlimited listening to select audiobooks, Audible originals, podcasts, and so much more. Plus, get a credit good for any title in their entire premium selection, yours to keep, including Manage Your Menopause Naturally, the book by today's guest, Maryon Stewart. It's a 6-week guide to calming hot flashes and night sweats, getting your sex drive back, sharpening memory, and reclaiming your well-being. You can cancel anytime during or after the free trial. There's never a commitment. They'll even send you an email to let you know when your trial is almost up. Head to audibletrial.com/40thrive to get your free trial today. That's audibletrial.com/FORTY thrive.
You're listening to the 40 Thrive podcast, the show created for women 40 and beyond, ready to shake things up. And now, your host, Jackie McDougall.
Welcome back to 40 Thrive. How are you doing? Like really, how are you actually doing? Maybe things are so damn good, you can't even handle it. Or maybe you need a little bit of support in one or more areas of your life. That's why we're here. Today, I'm talking with Maryon Stewart, the author of Manage Your Menopause Naturally. She's a world-renowned healthcare expert and has helped tens of thousands of women around the world overcome PMS and menopause symptoms without using any drugs or hormones. In 2018, Maryon was awarded the British Empire Medal. Doesn't that sound fancy? And was recognized as one of the 50 most inspirational women by the Daily Mail. Maryon is here to help us calm hot flashes and night sweats, as well as get our sex drive back. Oh yes, she says it's possible to get your sex drive back. Keep listening. We're going to hop into this super important topic, but before we do, did you know you can support 40 Thrive with a small, and I mean tiny, monthly donation, and at the same time connect with other women over 40 who are also looking to up-level their lives? Check out the show notes at 40thrive.com/episode 96. You'll see 2 levels, $3 a month, which gains you entry into a monthly live episode where you can engage with the guest and the other members and ask questions. It's pretty cool. I love doing those live monthly episodes. And the $10 level, which gets you into our cool happy hour, where we connect and exchange ideas, help each other through challenges, and let's be honest, just blow off a little steam. So check those 2 levels out. Like I said, super easy way to support 40 Thrive and as well help you connect with others during this kind of crazy time. Of course, for free, you can also join our private Facebook group. It's an active place for lifting each other up. I like to say it's the place to celebrate, collaborate, and commiserate. So check it out for sure. There's a link to that in the show notes as well. If you are ready to improve your life, step into your own personal power, and also hear from experts who can help you do all of the above, 40 Thrive was created just for you. So let's dive into today's super duper important conversation with menopause maven, Maryon Stewart. Maryon, welcome to 40 Thrive.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I have to tell you the first thing. I talked about your book in the intro, but I'm going to say it again. Manage Your Menopause Naturally. This is the part that I was like, yes, yes, yes. The 6-week guide to calming hot flashes, night sweats, getting your sex drive back. Actually, I kind of like blew over that. Getting your sex drive back, sharpening memory, and reclaiming well-being. This is such a great book. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
The thing that really caught my eye in this book, and if you hear me rustling, it's because I keep going through the book over and over again, but is that you break things down. It's not like do all of these things for 6 weeks. It's week 1, do this. And it's so manageable. Week 2, add this. Week 3, do this. And so I think as someone, myself with ADHD, but with women over 40, over 50, who have busy lives, have a lot going on, this is totally manageable. So can you bring me back to when you started to write this book, why you decided to do it in this way?
Okay, well, I'll have to wind back quite a way.
Okay.
I've been helping women for 28 years to manage their menopause naturally. And I used to see people on a one-to-one in my clinic in London in Harley Street. And about 3 years ago, I made 4 little films. Someone showed me how to make films for Facebook Live. And I did 4 films on my phone, which were really poor quality and terrifying to do because I'd been used to having my own TV show and, going on other people's TV shows and going to makeup and all of that stuff and getting my hair done. And there I was in someone's garden pointing my phone at my face. But nevertheless, in 12 weeks, over 1 million women saw those films.
Wow.
And I was completely inundated with suffering. So I decided that I needed to rise to the challenge. And I've done this before with PMS, where I literally helped hundreds of thousands of women to manage their health. And I felt I've got to work out a way of helping people in groups rather than just on a one-to-one, because I'm never going to, it's just going to be a spot in the ocean.
Right.
And so I got a team together and we set about taking my 5-month program, which was the one I'd been doing on a one-to-one, which helped 91% of women be symptom-free within 5 months.
Wow.
And I took all the science behind it and we broke it into 6 bite-sized modules, thinking that I could just teach women in little baby steps about the science. So I take all the guesswork out of Dr. Google, because when you've been up all night and, you've got brain fog and you're not really focusing because you're feeling anxious, the last thing you can do is tell what really is good scientific information online and what's really marketing information. We started to deliver this as a course. And what I didn't account for and bowled me over completely was that even in 6 weeks, we were turning women's lives around, because bearing in mind, it was a 5-month program. But even in 6 weeks, the hot flashes were going. Women were sleeping for the first time for years through the night. They were not aching and feeling 90. They were thinking clearly, and they started to get that tingly feeling again below the waist. And so that was how the program was born. And so obviously we've been refining it and we've been building tech. So that's our current mission too, so that we can scale the program to reach millions of women with personalized programs. So that's where we're going. But in the meantime, it occurred to me that if I could then write a book, so I could capture the 6 bite-sized chunks in the first 6 weeks, and then we can deal with things like preventing bone thinning disease, heart disease, dementia, all of those things that you're more predisposed to after menopause because you haven't got that circulating estrogen. The research shows you can prevent it all. And so teaching women how to meet their needs and having what I call a midlife refuel, which is just what you need when you get in your 40s and early 50s. And then you can get turbocharged again and you get it all back. So everything, all the symptoms go. And as you said in the beginning, you get that tingly feeling, you get your mojo back, and everything, even the vaginal dryness goes. You get back to feeling full of self-esteem and you get your sexy back.
That's fantastic. I want to point out 2 things that you did in business, because a lot of the women who listen to the show are also entrepreneurs or they're kind of shifting their careers. 2 things that stand out that I just side note. Number 1, you didn't wait until your tech was perfect for you to do those Facebook Lives. You had information that other people needed and wanted, and you did it anyway. And look what happened. So if you're sitting on the sidelines right now, waiting for everything to be perfect and the stars to align for you to take the leap, Maryon is a prime example of don't wait. The second thing too is that because you are selling these programs, a lot of people would say, oh, I don't want to give it away for, the cost of a book. It's in the program. But this is brilliant because your program is customized, as you were saying, to the woman who is taking it versus this is a more general education in the book.
Absolutely. But also, this is my 28th book. It's my first American book.
Wow.
And what I found in the past is that there are different groups of women. So there are women who need to prevent things and they just need information. There are women who suffer mildly to moderately and they can manage by themselves. But people that are suffering bordering on moderate to severe and they really are losing it, they're going to need some help. And so the book is an introduction to them and it will give them more confidence. And then they know that our course is there and they can come on the course. So it's a win-win situation. There'll be people that don't need my course and they don't need extra help, but they just need a book. Many years ago, I had a book on PMS and we made a film and we got some funding and we had 5,000 of these. In the time, it was videos. That's how long ago it was. And I was in Australia doing a book tour and I was in a women's library. It was a new women's library that was open in Melbourne. And the photographer was making me pose and he was saying, put your hand back on the shelf and move it there, move it there. And when I looked at my hand, there were 2 copies of this PMS video. And I only ever had 5,000 and I'd run out by then. I only owned 1 because they'd all gone. And there were 2 on the shelf in Melbourne. So it just made me realize that the ripple effect of putting information out there is never to be underestimated. The reason those films got so widely watched is that it came from my heart, because I'm absolutely incensed that women are left to suffer needlessly.
Right.
And it shouldn't be like that. There was a Mayo Clinic survey that was published in 2019 on doctors and gynecologists here in the US, showing that only 7% of them feel adequately educated to help women going through menopause.
It's unbelievable.
Atrocious.
Yeah.
You know, and our latest survey showed 96% of the women feel unprepared for menopause. 2/3 feel that they've been robbed of life as they knew it. And so many of them are taking medication. They're taking antidepressants when they don't really feel clinically depressed, or they're taking hormones and having side effects. And actually, even if they do that, they're never going to correct the nutritional deficiencies that research shows billions of women have got.
Right.
And you never can feel well if you're running on empty. You've got to refuel.
So true. So I went into medical menopause. I had surgery when I was 35. And so I had everything removed. I was super young. I'm almost 50. And so it's been a long time. So for me, that's just the way of life, right? But one of the things that I noticed to this day is depending on what my habits are, what I'm eating and drinking and how much I'm moving, I will have either nights covered in sweat or none at all. And people don't want to necessarily believe it, or maybe they just don't want to do the work that is required or to avoid certain foods or whatever. But it's absolutely magical. So can we break down sort of week by week what we'll learn when we get your book?
Yes, but before I do that, one thing I want to point out, which is really key along the lines of what you said just now, that they don't want to do the work. What they need to bear in mind is that 100 years or so ago, we weren't living much past 50.
Right.
But now 40 something represents halfway for many of us. If you want to have a good quality life and enjoy yourself, then you've got to do something, because you get to a fork in the road when you get to this life stage. And you either do nothing and go downhill and then get old before your time and life is rubbish and you take what comes, or you get on board with the information, the good science-based information, put it to good use, and not only can you overcome your symptoms, but also you can prevent things like osteoporosis, heart disease, and dementia, which means that longevity becomes a much better experience for you, and that you can have a good, full, happy life, use your wisdom to best effect. And also the research shows, for example, that consuming naturally occurring estrogen even reduces the depths of wrinkles on your face. It doesn't just help with vaginal dryness, but it helps with your hair and your skin and your nails. So that all helps with your self-esteem. I think the women on my program, they come very often on the program because we're the last resort.
Right.
But a few weeks into the program, they start to see the benefits. And at that point, they're self-motivated, because they can see that they're not only looking better, they're feeling better, they're sleeping, they're thinking more clearly, and they see, I need to do this, and it's not negotiable.
Right.
Because I want to feel like this. I don't want to feel bad again.
Right. Isn't it amazing? We don't really take that step until we're at the end of our rope. It's either suffer in silence and just deal with it, or fine, I'll just try this one thing. And who knew it would be so easy to reverse? So let's break down the book, because again, week to week is just so manageable for anyone versus here's all this information. Now try to figure it out for yourself. So talk to me about week 1.
So what I'm trying to do in week 1 is ask everyone to trust me. And I'm dealing with the top line symptoms. So things that we talked about, like the hot flashes, night sweats, anxiety, particularly in COVID at the moment. So many people are feeling stressed and anxious, having panic attacks and palpitations. They're not sleeping very well, as well as feeling achy and headachy and low libido. So I take all those, vaginal dryness, and I give a quick fix. So I'm giving tips that people can use to get started so that they get the journey underway without feeling overwhelmed. And then as we go into week 2, I'm then focusing on detecting and correcting nutritional deficiencies. So Mother Nature gives us all these amazing signs on our hair, our skin, and our nails about the nutrients we're low in. So for example, if you've got cracking at the side of your mouth, corners of your mouth, you've got red patches at the side of your nose, greasy or dry skin, your hair's brittle and split or falling out, your nails are ridgy and they're breaking too, you've got pimples on your upper arms or thighs. All of those things mean something in terms of nutritional deficiencies. So our 5 studies that we actually undertook ourselves showed that between 50 to 80% of women have got low levels of things like magnesium, vitamin B, vitamin D, essential fatty acids, calcium, and so on, lots of different minerals. And those things, when you're short of them, they actually change the color of the lenses through which you see the world. And you're running on empty. You're a bit like a bucket with a hole in it, and you're in what I call economy mode. So in week 2, I'm teaching women how to have the refuel nutritionally, how to detect the deficiencies and how to correct them. And at the back of the book, I've got lists of foods that are rich in important nutrients. So you can choose the foods that you like, because it needs to be sustainable. You need to be able to consume things that are palatable to you and not a chore to swallow, because otherwise you won't be able to continue with it. So that's week 2. In week 3, I take a deep dive into Mother Nature's estrogen, because before menopause, you have all this lovely estradiol circulating around your system. When you look under the microscope, Mother Nature's estrogen is just the same or similar to the molecule. And so you can fool the brain into thinking that you've got normal circulating estrogen again. And so those receptor sites that are now empty because you're going through the menopause, and what's happening in your body is the brain doesn't get it. So it's trying to kickstart your ovaries back into function. It keeps sending these thermal surges through your body, which make you hot and anxious and wakeful, because the brain is basically saying, wake up, ovaries function. But the brain doesn't remember that you're only really programmed to live till you're 50 and the rest is extra time. And so it keeps on doing that. And I've had patients in their 70s and even 80s who are still having hot flashes, because you're never going to get estrogen from your ovaries again. So by consuming estrogen naturally, little and often, because the receptor sites don't stay full for very long. So we teach women how to have some for breakfast, lunch, dinner, maybe a snack, just so they have enough to fool the brain into thinking it's got circulating estrogen, and then the symptoms turn off. And that's what helps. In fact, the very first study I ever read was on menopause in the British Medical Journal, and the natural approach was a study that was conducted in Australia at Monash University, where they gave women soy and flax seeds and red clover. And they found that they were able to bring about the same changes in the lining of the vagina as they would expect to see in women taking hormone replacement therapy.
Wow.
And I pricked up my ears and I thought, wow, that's really powerful.
Absolutely.
Over the years, there's been tons more research. Each week I interpret the research into just ordinary language. And then at the back of the book, I've got all the medical references, because everything we do is based on published medical research.
Yes.
So that's week 3.
Well, hold on one second there, because I do want to, you mentioned soy and as well as some other things, but you know, soy is like that thing we love to hate. One day it's great. One day we're getting reports that it's going to cause cancer. So can you kind of unpack that a little bit with soy?
Yes, of course. And I do in the book as well.
Yes.
Because I get asked this question every single week of my life. You're right. I think there's a war going on between the dairy industry and the soy industry, and there are all these rumors. But actually what the research shows is it's cancer protective, and that you've got in the environment, you've got xenoestrogens, which come from plastic and pesticides and waste materials and so on. When you've got empty estrogen receptor sites, those xenoestrogens jump into that space, and they do cause increased risk of cancer. And when you take Mother Nature's estrogen, if you imagined you had a race, like an egg and spoon race, and in one lane you've got HRT, hormone replacement therapy, in the next lane you've got the environmental estrogen, the harmful estrogen, and the next lane you've got Mother Nature's estrogen. Mother Nature's estrogen gets there first, jumps into the receptor site and seals it off, and it actually has a cancer protective effect. So the research shows that even women who've had breast cancer can take naturally occurring estrogen, including soy, which is a really rich source, and can expect to be protected. So it doesn't cause cancer. And if you think about it, think about Asian communities that have been consuming soy for generations. If you look at the medical evidence, it shows that they have half the risk of estrogen-dependent cancer and half the risk of heart disease, osteoporosis, and dementia. And they reckon that that's because they have a lot of soy and oily fish, particularly in their diet.
Right. And I saw a doctor recently who is an integrative doctor and who is very much into nutrition and healing the body in a multitude of ways. And he absolutely 100% was the same way. Some studies are done and it's not the full picture. And so when you hear something on a headline, local news, or your favorite website, make sure that you dive in a little bit more deeply.
Yes, absolutely. And it's very, very, very confusing, even to the point where the medical profession are utterly confused.
Right.
And I remember reading a medical paper on hormone replacement therapy, and the headline was really positive. But when I actually read the paper, it wasn't so positive. So sometimes even the journalists don't interpret the medical papers properly.
Right. Yeah, you've got to do your research, right? So, okay, let's dive into week 4.
Week 4, we're talking about nutritional supplements and herbs, but all the things that recommended on our program have been through properly conducted clinical trials. Because if you just go to the high street and pick up a pretty packet, the research shows it doesn't necessarily contain what it says on the label.
Really?
Sadly. And that's something that makes me...
Wait, that needs to be repeated.
I was horrified when I read about it, but I'd actually had first-hand experience because years ago we were asked by a company that produced, I won't say what the name of the supplement was, but it was a supplement for menopause that was supposed to contain 39 milligrams of isoflavones, these naturally occurring estrogen. And I was asking for the research to support it. And while they were going away to get the research that they assured me they had, I came to the US to a conference on isoflavones, and I was moaning at tea time to 2 researchers I knew. One was a professor here and one was from Oxford in England. And I was saying, there's so many new supplements on the market, I haven't got a clue what's really in them. And they laughed at each other and said, would you like to share the findings of our new study that isn't published yet, that was a review of 40 supplements and an independent analysis. And they found out of those 40 supplements, only 2 of them contained what they said on the label. And this pill that was supposed to contain 39 milligrams of isoflavones actually only contained 1.
No way.
Absolutely.
And they can get away with it, right? Because there aren't as many guidelines, correct, for supplements as there are for medications?
I know. It's so awful. And it's not just that. There's plenty of other research to show that very often these packets do not contain what they say on the label. There's no real regulation. And so if we're taking something into our body that's going to influence our hormones, we want to make sure not only it's effective, but it's also safe.
Right.
We don't want the lining of our uterus growing more than it should. We don't want all sorts of problems with our breasts and so on. We want to know that they've done the research to make sure that these things are okay. And so that's why I'm only recommending things that have been through properly conducted clinical trials. And there are a number of supplements. So it's up to each individual person to select. Obviously, on our program, we tailor make the program for each individual person according to their symptom set. But how I've designed the book is that people can read about the supplements and then choose the supplements. There's a whole grid in there which says, if you've got anxiety or depression or whatever it is, you can look up which are the supplements that you can take for that. And you can see, you can work out your own regime.
How do you know that the company that you find is legit and that the contents in the supplement is what they say is in there?
Because the ones I'm recommending are brand names, and they're the ones that have been through the clinical trials. Yeah, so that's
perfect.
So it's just taking the guesswork out of it completely.
Great. So it's not just the type of supplement, but the actual brands.
Yes.
Yes, I haven't gotten that far, so that's exciting. Yeah. Okay, great. And then week 5, you dive into stress, sleep, and putting sex back on the menu. Yeah. I love this chapter, so let's talk about that.
Okay, so stress is really key at the moment. And when you're stressed, your cortisol, your stress hormone, elevates. And when that happens, you very often get symptoms that mimic menopause. So you can get brain fog, you can get hot flashes, feel anxious, achy, tired, and a complete shadow of your former self. And on top of menopause, that's really untenable. So it's very important to learn how to unpack the stress and deal with it. And so I wanted to focus on that, especially at this time.
Right.
And it obviously has a spill on to how you sleep, because if you're having these night sweats every half an hour, then your sleep's going to be rubbish. And also if you've got thinning tissues in your urethra and your bladder, you're going to be waking up to pee in the night regularly. And some of the people that come on our program are getting up 7-8 times a night to pee, and they're waking up every half an hour with these night sweats, and it just makes them feel completely wretched.
Right.
And so it's important to focus on that. And then obviously to give people hope, because in our relationship survey, we found over 70% of women reported having low libido at menopause, and over 50% of them have vaginal dryness. In some of the studies, it shows as many as 70%. And that means that sex becomes painful. Many of the women describe the fact that they feel switched off from the waist downwards. They just feel that they don't even want to go there. And even when they're touched, they start getting hot. And so it becomes a no-go. And we've even done surveys on men, and the men feel scared, frustrated, rejected. They have no clue what's going on, and because the women don't really understand, and they don't want to have the conversation because no one told them that they can do a U-turn and reclaim it all. And so they think that this is the beginning of the end of life as they knew it. And they feel really frightened and really isolated. And things like low libido and vaginal dryness, they don't even talk to their best friend about it.
Right.
And so they feel so alone and often mourn the loss of themselves. And so that's why I wanted to really give them hope. So in 6 weeks, you're not going to get your libido back, but you're going to be on track. Many of the women in 6 weeks will feel that their brain fog's gone, they're sleeping better, they're not anxious anymore, their thermometer's back in control. If they were constipated, which half of the women are, they're not constipated anymore and they're not achy. But the actual libido and vaginal dryness takes a little bit longer.
Right.
As I said in the beginning, it's a 5-month program, but if they see it through, and there are plenty of supplements that help, sometimes libido comes back automatically when you have the midlife refuel. But if it doesn't, then there are some specialist supplements that have been through clinical trials that show that 70 to 80% of women get libido back just with the supplements. So there's plenty of things that you can do.
Right.
And again, I've got all the research in there and all the brands of supplements that people can try to help themselves to get back. One word of warning, though, I tend to make sure that if they've got vaginal dryness, they get that sorted out first before they do the libido thing, because otherwise they end up trying to have penetration. It becomes really sore. And some women get so sore that they even bleed. So it is important to get the tissues sorted out.
Right.
And then get really active.
Yeah, I like that you have it in that order, as far as stress, sleep, and then putting sex back on, because imagine you're taking the supplement and now your sex drive is back, or maybe you don't have vaginal dryness, but you're still stressed and you're still sleepy. It's not going to go as well as you'd like.
No, absolutely. And I think as women, certainly using myself as an example, I had 4 children. I wrote all those books. I ran a busy advisory service. And I was absolutely bottom of my priority list. We look after everybody else first.
Yes.
And it's not until we fall over that we start to know that we've got to do something. Otherwise, we're not really going to be in the game anymore.
Right.
And even with COVID in the air at the moment and people being restricted in what they can do, they can actually spend this time nurturing themselves and learning to have their midlife refuel so that when the world opens up again, they're turbocharged and ready to get on with anything they choose to do.
Right.
And I think that's really important because we've got so much wisdom when we get to midlife that it's a crying shame if we're just curled up in a ball and we can't leave home because we feel so bad. So getting ourselves back into really good shape is helpful, not just for ourselves, but for us in the workplace, in the family, and in the world generally.
Right. I could not agree with you more. I believe we are positioned to do incredible work within ourselves, our families, our communities, the world. But if we're feeling like crap, it's pretty tough to do that. Yeah. And so what are some of your favorite stress relievers?
For me, I'd say one of them is exercise to my favorite music. And I don't mean running a marathon necessarily. I've never run a marathon. I'm not suggesting other people do. I know lots of people like doing that.
Sounds exhausting.
I just love putting on music and dancing and stretching and doing all that kind of stuff and swimming. They're my things. I use an app because I'm not really good at meditating. So I use a guided meditation, which takes me into a really deep, relaxed state. Yes. And I talk about that in the book as well, because it's created by neuroscientists and it helps to really take you into a restful state. It's a bit like plugging your phone into the mains,
right?
Going from red to green so that you can get up and feel good again.
Which app do you use?
I use one called Pazizz.
Oh, I'll link to it in the show notes because if it's working for you, it might work for some of my listeners.
Honestly, patients love it. Absolutely love it. And my team love it as well. So even just half an hour a day, not only does it take the stress away because it makes you feel really relaxed, but it also helps to rewire your brain. And the research shows that doing half an hour or 20 minutes to 30 minutes of formal relaxation a day eases your hot flashes by 50 to 60%.
Wow.
So it's doing a lot. And if you've got high cortisol, stress hormone, it helps to bring that down as well.
Right.
Other things, sex is good because that releases all the feel-good hormones. And I rescued a little puppy during COVID. So that's my de-stressing, and knitting. I like knitting.
You do?
Just watching movies and knitting. That's the time when I'm switched off and really in my kind of happy zone.
Right. You could be knitting sweaters for your new puppy.
I could, but at the moment I'm knitting teddy bears and teddy bear clothes for my husband's grandchildren. So yeah.
Oh, that's adorable. That's great. I think week 5, from all the conversations I've had with the women in my community, stress, sleep, and sex are so, so important. So I love that you give that its own section, and anything from just changing some habits to all the way to taking some supplements, you know, depending on the person, what they need. And so I like that customized approach.
Yes.
Okay. And week 6, we talk about that wisdom that you mentioned. What's in week 6?
Yeah, it's about mindset, but we're also looking at, in the process of all this, we're looking at weight loss without dieting, because women lose between 7 and 12 pounds usually within the first 6 weeks without dieting at all.
Wow.
And just by getting their body back in shape. And when you have this refuel, you're then able to look at the world through different colored lenses. And it's a much better place so that you can be in your happy zone and work out what do you want to do next. Because instead of being overwhelmed by your symptoms and scared, suddenly you can see there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And you've got this blank canvas, and you can then choose what to put on it. So it's really about, how do you move forward? What are you going to vision as your next chapter? And how do you manifest that dream?
Yes, I love that. I have a program myself where I had a student who came in looking to boost her business. And what she ended up doing was really getting clear on what was going on in her body. And she went and she had things taken care of. She was in pain like every single day. And she realized that boosting the business at that time was not her priority. Getting herself back aligned was her priority. And now her business is thriving because she focused that time on her. So I love that you do that. Then almost anything is possible when you're feeling good, right?
Absolutely. And I don't think many women really understand that, because what happens is we go downhill so slowly, especially if you've had babies and breastfed them. By the time you get into your 40s, you really are a shadow of your former self, running on empty, and you forget what feeling good is really like.
Right.
And so it's not until you have the refuel and you come back out the other end, you realize how far down you went.
So true.
And that's amazing.
Yeah.
I've got stories in the book of real life stories. I always do that in my books because they're so uplifting, and women love to read about other women's stories. And one of them is a professor who I met at a menopause conference, and she was one of the co-authors of the British government report on menopause in the workplace. And she confided in me after the event that she thought she had early Alzheimer's. And for the first time in her life, she had spots on her face. She felt depressed. She was tired and she was constipated. And so I said to her, come on our program, just come. So she did. And within the space, I can't remember if it was 6 or 8 weeks, but she was completely symptom-free. She was thinking clearly. Her spots had cleared up. Her bowel was working. She wasn't tired anymore. And instead of thinking of leaving the workplace, because she couldn't literally string a sentence together before, and she couldn't remember her colleagues' names even, now she's so turbocharged. She describes herself as practically a new woman. And she's been made head of department at her university.
Wow.
So the difference that it's made to her life, but not just her life, all the people that are going to benefit from her wisdom in her university, the ripple effect's amazing. And so
that's right.
I see this all the time. There was one stories in the book of a midwife. She was signed off work because she was stressed and overwhelmed, and she was literally curled up in a ball and couldn't function. And now she's back to delivering loads of babies. She's in charge of a team. She's having an absolute ball.
Right.
And it's a whole different life. And some people even reinvent themselves. One of my patients, she became a counselor specializing in women's health. Another one became a healer.
Wow.
It's just a time when you can go and do what you were born to do because you're feeling well.
Absolutely. And that's what's so wild too about it, is that we get to this place in our life with the most experience we've ever had, education. We have so much to offer, and yet our bodies feel like they could feel like they're failing us. And so it doesn't feel aligned. And so I love that all of what you're doing gets you back into that place of feeling well. So you can be the most kick-ass you at this age.
Yes.
That's so exciting to me. I love this. And I'm going to have to go and take your course myself.
Oh, you're most welcome. And the other thing in the book is that because we've done so much hands-on stuff, I know that some women love to cook and spend time in the kitchen. And so we've got lovely recipes and menus and meal plans.
Yes, that's my favorite part. I have highlights.
But some women absolutely hate cooking and allergic to the kitchen. So we've got lots of fast options and shopping lists and things that you can do without actually having to cook and still get the goodies that you need. So it doesn't have to be really complicated.
Yes.
It can be quite simple depending on your tastes and whatever you fancy doing.
Right. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because these are the types of people that I want to speak to. Those who are like, let's fuel our bodies with things that feel good and do things that we may have seen 10 years ago, 20 years ago as punishment, right? Eating healthy and exercise. And we were sort of like taught that those were the things we had to do to lose weight or to look better. And now we're at an age where we're like, no. I deserve to feel my best. And so these are the things I eat to feel better. This is why I move my body. It's just a total flip of the mindset around nutrition and exercise. And I really wish I could go back and teach this to my 25-year-old self.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Because I was helping women with PMS when I was in my 20s,
right?
I learned about this stuff. And so I did stay exercising and doing all those good things. And it's only at times in my life when I haven't been able to, when I've injured something, and then you stop exercising. And it doesn't take more than about 3 or 4 weeks to lose your fitness.
Yes.
And it's so surprising how you feel so different.
Right.
So I know when I get up in the morning, if I feel tired and sluggish for any reason, if I haven't had a good night, if I do my guided meditation before I get up, I suddenly bounce out of bed and feel great. And then I get up and I do my exercise and I'm as high as a kite. And I have my best ideas when I'm exercising. Somehow your brain goes into some other place. And when I'm swimming or dancing or whatever it is, I suddenly have all these really good ideas.
Definitely.
Which means I'm more efficient during the day.
Right.
When I go and rest for half an hour, I don't regard that as being a waste of time. I hear so many women say, I haven't got time to do that, I'm too busy. But actually, by going to do that, it's like going to sleep for a couple of hours. So you come out feeling turbocharged and you get that time back and more.
Right.
So it's a false economy to say you haven't got time to do it because it serves you so well.
It's like driving your car on a road trip and saying that you don't have time for gas. Well, guess what's going to happen?
Exactly.
You're not going to make it there.
So, funnily enough, I use that analogy sometimes, and I find it utterly amazing that the body does keep going, but it fires only on 2 cylinders instead of 4. And we feel so rubbish.
Right.
And we don't question it because no one tells us that there's any other way to be other than bad.
That's true.
And so that's why I wanted to get this book out, especially in America, which is my first American book, because I want women to have hope. I want them to know that they don't have to just fall apart. The statistics show that 1 in 4 women at the moment leave the workplace because of menopause. And there was a study published in the UK a couple of months ago on female doctors showing that 90% of them feel bothered by their menopause to the point where 45% are saying they're going to either give up work or work less.
Wow.
That made me cry because I thought, well, why haven't they read the medical papers? Why aren't they helping themselves? They just haven't got the information.
Right.
Women desperately need the knowledge. And in my experience, once they've got the knowledge, they apply it and it makes such a difference to their lives.
Yeah. Let's remove the shame and all of the negative feelings that we have attached to this, like we're drying up or shriveling up. We have so many years of life. You made this point at the beginning where you were lucky if you lived to 50. And now that's sometimes the midway point. And so it's really important to take care of yourself and to understand that you're not shriveling up. Like this is just another transition. Like you talked about PMS and getting your period. This is like that second iteration of that change. And I think the more we talk about it and the more we admit that we don't know much and that our doctors don't know much and we turn to places like your book, the better off we'll be.
Yeah, I think what we're looking at doing, because we're working with corporations as well now. We've partnered with Virgin Care and some other companies.
That's great.
In 2019, Forbes said that menopause is costing $810 billion a year globally because of lost productivity.
Wow.
And associated healthcare costs. It's actually staggering. And what the companies don't realize, they're losing a fortune because we're the fastest growing sector in the workplace. But if you're not there mentally because you've got brain fog or anxiety or you're having hot flashes, then you're not going to be your productive self. And that's really not fair to anybody. So by investing a bit in women, we're able to get them back to feeling really well again and being really productive. And I think that's terribly important because as women, we've been competing with men in the workplace all our working lives. And the last thing we want is an M badge and a desk fan when we get to midlife.
Right? Although I would be curious when Forbes is going to release the study on men and productivity after a certain age, because isn't it amazing?
Yeah, but I think that these things happen to women because you're not sleeping.
Yeah.
And you're feeling so strung out and stressed and your thermometer is completely up the chute.
Right.
It's so difficult to feel well.
Yes.
And also women have nutritional deficiencies much more so than men. That's what the research shows.
Interesting.
And so we are different animals, but equally we've got a lot to offer in the workplace.
Right.
And it's important that we can step up and be present and do the work that we're supposed to do without having to be burdened by symptoms. So that's why it's important, I think, to get yourself into really good shape, especially if you want to hang on to your career. And for anyone who's thinking of leaving the workplace because of this and just not feeling up to the challenge, I just implore you not to do that until you've got yourself sorted out, because I've met so many women who've left work and then they get themselves into good shape and then they find it hard to get back into the workplace.
That's a great point. That is a really great point.
Yeah.
So get yourself in shape, do the work here, see how you feel. If you still want to leave, leave. But at least don't do it because of these symptoms.
Yes. We have on my website something called the Midlife Refuel Club. So anyone can come and join that. It's free. And I do a live session every week. So if someone's got the book and they want to ask questions,
oh, that's great.
They can come and actually meet me and get their questions answered, even if they're not on our program. And obviously, if anyone needs help, then they can come and find out about that as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. I will definitely link to all of that. Thank you so much.
And you're most welcome. I look forward to helping you.
Thank you so much for listening. We keep the conversation going in our free and private Facebook group, so make sure you join us over there. Also, if you have any questions, comments, wishes, hopes, dreams of something you'd like to hear on 40 Thrive, send us an email at hello@40thrive.com. Until next time, take care and keep thriving.